Welcome back. Right, today you're going to understand the largest revamp that professions have ever seen in World of Warcraft's 18-year lifespan. From a top-level view to the specific gameplay, to Blizzard's response to what's probably the thing that's got most people worried about this system, and that, of course, is memories of the situation that arose around Shadowlands legendaries, and how crazy absurdly expensive they were. Okay, top-level view, let's go. At its core, Dragonflight adds in crafting stats, more quality levels to materials and reagents, as well as a number of other features that have deepened the experience, such as finishing reagents, profession gear, and even talent specializations for your professions. If you like the idea of being a weaponsmith or a armorsmith back in the game's older days in Vanilla or the Burning Crusade, you're going to have that again. You've also got a new work order system. This is going to make it easier for you to find a crafter to make you things. And this is quite big, because crafting now acts as a form of gear catch-up. For if you can grind out the soul-bound mats needed, a crafter can make you literally some of the best gear in the game. Blizzard's intent, in fact, is that this can be the main thing that you do in World of Warcraft. So just like someone likes to raid, someone likes to do Mythic Plus, you can be a crafter. Now, the most recent build of the alpha actually added so much more in, so I thought why not just hop in and show you how it actually works. Okay, so here we are, and I'm ready to start crafting for you to give you a demo of how this system works. So the specialization system opens up at level 25. You can see I can't currently access it. However, I have got myself a whole bunch of materials from the vendor, and with that I can show you how the difficulty system works. You can see right now I have Dragon Isles Blacksmithing 1 out of 10, so really bad. In order to make these Explorer bracelets, I need 1 ore of each type and then 5 Primal Flux. These currently cost 18 gold, and it's just 1 of each ore, which perhaps makes me wonder if they're trying to design it so that ore, well, just so the expenses aren't that big. Anyhow, I'm going to make 1 of these. You can see right now that I can make it at 2-star quality, and you can see that depending on the quality, I get a different item level. Now, with the inspiration stat, I have a 5% chance to craft this with 17 bonus skill. Maybe that would mean I'd make it at item level 272 instead of 274 instead of 272. So let's go and let's just make 10 of these. Doing so is going to teach you another part, or show you another part of the UI, where I get a little crafting log of everything. And there's another cool UI element too. If I click this, I can track the recipe. And you can see here, I'm actually able to see the recipe, which for something a bit more complex would be potentially handy for some players. So as I craft this, my experience is going up, my skill level here. You can see that as I get a higher skill rating, the expected quality increases and increases and increases. Eventually, of course, that will get to the stage where 100% of the time, I will create this at its maximum quality. Now, as you can see here, because of the inspiration stat, I was actually able to craft 1 of these at a higher item level, though it seems like there's a bug and it doesn't actually have a higher item level. And now, though, that I am a higher rank at blacksmithing, I will always make these at gold quality. Okay, so I'm actually ranked up enough that I can now show you the specialization system. And this, to be honest with you, is really cool. So you can see here, I have armor smithing, weapon smithing, speciality smithing, and then anvil mastery. Okay, so speciality is for making non-material goods like tools and alloys. Those are basically just component parts and then tools, which are useful for other crafters. Weapon smithing and armor smithing, of course, self-explanatory. And the anvil then allows you to use your resources more economically and also just improve all of your crafts. So the first one here, it's got 30 ranks. Improve the art of blacksmithing, gaining crafting skill per point in this specialization. Now, Blizzard have actually been pretty cool, and they've given me a little book that I can use to just generate this crafting knowledge resource. So I can just keep on going. You can see that I'm powering it up. I'm going through the quadrants of this circle, right? And now it is complete. So I'm going to be significantly better when I apply these changes. And that means that for that sword I was crafting earlier, now I'm actually crafting it at diamond quality, right? The second highest level of rarity. Of course, I probably wouldn't normally be dumping so many points into that thing just so quickly. Now after that, we've got Spartan Smithing, which allows me to, well, basically it gives me a secondary stat called Resourcefulness, which actually saves 5% of additional reagents when crafting blacksmithing goods. So that's pretty sweet. And then this one gives me more inspiration, with inspiration basically being the equivalent of a critical strike. If I was to then try out some weaponsmithing, well, improve at making weapons and large tools, gaining crafting skill per point in this specialization. And then, once I unlock this crafting specialization, which I'm going to do now, and I can only choose one of those at a time, so let's just say that this character is going to make weapons. I'm now in here. So, I can spend a whole bunch of these points to get better at weaponsmithing, but I'll go to the vendor and get a whole bunch more. So as I level this up, you can see in the next little sort of marker that I hit, I'll be able to get 5 extra inspiration, so that will give me some crafting crits. And then the final one lets me use optional reagents, which of course I can use to make things significantly more powerful. From this point then, I can either go into blades or I can go into hafted. Let's just go into blades for now. So we'll learn this sub-spec. Now the sub-spec is learned. So this is the amount of depth we're putting into this. So let's just add a whole bunch in. Now, what are we going to get? Well, I'm going to be able to choose my next sub-spec, long blades or short blades, after I go there. The next one, resourcefulness. After that, another sub-spec. After that, inspiration. And then finally, optional reagents. So let's just go through all of them. So this is fully leveled up. Again, this is humongously accelerated. This is not actually how it would play in-game. Let's say I want to go into long blades. So I'm going to learn that sub-spec of crafting as well. And as I go through the talents then, I will get 5 crafting skill, so that'll just make me better at making them. I'll be able to make a primal molten longsword. That's very powerful. More crafting skill. A warglaive. Finishing reagents, which can be important for actually getting your crafting skill up there and making stuff of the highest quality. And then, yeah, some more crafting skill. So let's just put a whole bunch of resources into this. So now I have got long blades fully maxed out. So at this stage, I am basically the server. I'm like the badass at making a long blade. So if I go back to recipes, we can take a look at this longsword. So this is going to be item level 393. And when I first would have unlocked that, if I had less skill, I wouldn't be able to make it at as good a level of quality. Now, though, I can make it at baseline gold quality. So what other things impact quality? Well, there is the actual quality of the resources you put in. So let's make some of these primal molten alloys. Now these are interesting. Let me demo off another part of this, and that is the quality of the actual reagents that you have. So you can see here, I can make this at its 2-star, its max quality, right? And I can do that all the time. However, there is 1, 2, and 3-star quality for this ore. So if I was to use all of the most basic cheap draconium ore, and then a cheap bit of this this blue ore, you can see I'd actually make it at bronze quality, not silver quality. Now, because I can just get this stuff cheaply from the NPC, I'm going to now make it with the highest quality reagents. And you can actually see I'm not quite there yet. The expected quality isn't there. Now, perhaps if I was to go into Anvil Mastery, I could perhaps spec myself into getting some more inspiration, right? Yeah, I could do that. That'll give me more inspiration, more chances of critting. Now, the thing is, as I upgrade my level of crafting skill in this character, which of course is this number here, I will get better at making all items. So very soon I will be able to make this at 2-star quality all of the time. Almost there. So now that I've made a whole bunch of this, if I go back to my primal molten longsword, I've got all the things that I need. Now I can show you optional reagents and finishing reagents. So I can infuse this with power, and unfortunately these sometimes bug the UI. So this, right, the distilled primal infusion. If I use this, it will add 50 difficulty to the recipe. That will of course mean it will be harder for me to craft. So I'll need to have either more inspiration and get lucky with a crit, or I'll need to have better crafting gear for my character. I'll have to perhaps have more progress through some of the trees, that sort of thing. I mean, to be honest, chances of me making one of these longswords at this low of a crafting skill level overall, pretty much non-existent, right? Because this isn't exactly ideal test conditions. So that basically, you can see the different item levels 406 to 416, 419 to 429. Of course, within that item level range, the item level you get, that will be determined by the level of quality that you can craft it. So you'll get better item, but it makes it a harder craft. I actually don't have any of these, so that's okay. I can then customize my secondary stats, basically the missive system that we already know in the game, and then an embellishment. And these are interesting. They're actually little buffs. So the idea now is that you can make a sword that actually has a cool buff. So these two don't seem to be implemented, but with this, it will increase the duration of potions by 10%. This one will increase the duration of well-fed from food by 100% and make the food persist through death. And then what does this one do? Increase physical damage dealt by 1%. I don't know if that one will make it in, but anyway, more customization. And then for finishing reagents, here's one, increase the effectiveness of inspiration. So if you have an inspiration build, you'll use that. This one, it just improves resourcefulness and deftness, which are two other crafting stats. I don't have those items, so I'm just going to make this primal longsword. And hopefully it'll give me some more crafting skill. There we go. And I made this at the diamond level of quality. So I've now actually unlocked some of the finishing reagents, and I'm going to show you something kind of cool. So I've stacked up, let's just say 10 of these. Now what this does is this increases crafting skill by 30 when it's used in a recipe. So I'm going to create this. Now I'm going to show you. So you can see that as my crafting level up here goes up, the expected quality also goes up because I'm becoming a better crafter. So the crafting skill here comes from a number of sources. It comes from the actual crafting equipment that you are using, which doesn't seem to be implemented yet. There were actually inventory spaces in the previous build, but they're gone now for some reason. But it's a mixture of that gear, the skill level here, the various different things you specialized into, and then also the likes of your finishing reagents, which you can see I've actually not unlocked yet. And that just shows us what this system is like. The idea is that you will be slowly moving through this thing over time. All right, unfortunately, it doesn't seem the optional reagents work in this build. They did in the last one, but hey, it is what it is. Now you can kind of understand the idea, though. You want to increase your blacksmithing, all right? Now this, I think it's about like 50 or 60. The gains start to slow down humongously. However, you'll actually be able to make every single pattern by then. The progress from 60 to 100, I think, is mostly just there to increase your crafting skill so you can get closer to making things at the highest quality every time. But by the time you can add in the essence of tier to increase the crafting skill, and you've got most of your, these things actually leveled up, then you'll be reliably making very, very, very high quality items. And if a raider, or you yourself as a raider or a mythic pluser, etc., get the optional resources, the soulbound reagents required, then you'll be able to make things at higher levels of difficulty. You can see these in the infuse and power slot, where you can go straight up to mythic raid quality. Doing so, of course, will involve getting those resources somehow, either doing the mythic raid yourself or doing a craft order for someone else. The final thing that I would do then is show you Valdrakken. Unfortunately, the best that I can do is cut to some footage. You're not actually able to get to Valdrakken yet, but it's an important place because that's where the craft orders are currently happening. So with the craft orders, basically, you can select one as a crafter. From the point you do that, I believe you have 30 minutes to actually fulfill that order. If you don't, then that order goes back into the craft order system and another crafter can take that order. Basically, it means that, let's just say you're a raider, you have a bunch of soulbound items, or the soulbound soulbound reagents that are used to actually make the highest quality things. Well, you can put in a crafting order for the super badass sword that you want, put your soulbound stuff in, and anything else, you put it up there, and then a crafter will be able to go and do that work order for you. So that's the other side of how the system works, and Blizzard's intent is that you are, as you are maybe moving kind of like from blacksmithing, 60 to 100, a lot of that they want you to be doing via that work order system. So this is, suffice to say, completely different to what professions used to be. And their goal with all of this, now if you look here, requires armor smithing, requires level 50 of Dragonflight's blacksmithing to unlock an additional specialization. So Blizzard's perspective here is that you will eventually be able to do everything. It's just that you'll have to pick a direction initially. And that does mean that there will be differentiation in various different crafters. It does mean that if there's two crafters who are in the same guild and they're both blacksmiths, they might want to go in different directions so that they can provide a broader base of crafting services for their guildies. Way more depth, quite a bit more, I suppose, individuality between crafters. We'll have to see how the whole thing shakes out. Now, those crafting the work order system, that is on a realm-by-realm basis currently. So it will be a bit strange, I think, on more quiet servers. I think things will be a lot more competitive and you'll have an easier time getting your orders fulfilled on a more populated server. Blizzard did say, though, that if they feel it makes sense, that they can look into making this a realm-wide thing. So there you go. That is the state of the profession revamp, as far as we can see it currently on the alpha, but there are a few more things to talk about. Welcome back. So now you understand basically how it works. You know about the crafting difficulty, a few of the stats, how difficulty changes, the role of RNG, the eventual lack of it, specialization system. It's quite a lot, isn't it? Now, RNG is something I want to tackle here to be very clear about it, because definitely gives people the heebie-jeebies. So, the RNG does exist here, but as you saw in my gameplay, as you specialize, you remove the role of RNG with stats like inspiration in the things you specialize towards. And then as you move out and specialize in more things as time goes on, RNG will become less and less relevant. That means that inspiration is still quite a handy stat to have when you are crafting in areas where you haven't already spec'd. Okay, more on the statistics then. I think this is kind of fun, you know, almost giving you different builds. So inspiration is, of course, crit, gives you a chance to craft at a higher skill level. Resourcefulness gives you a chance to use less resources in a craft. Then multi-craft, I mean, that's a perfect thing for people making potions and vials. And of course, crafting speed, well, for those people who are choosing a volume strategy, that's going to be awesome. Because believe me, right now, there are people that queue up crafts that last for, 30 minutes. A hell of a lot of time. So basically, different gear sets for different situations. And then, of course, there's the nice little thing with the profession gear, which sadly isn't testable yet, where you automatically switch into it when you're actually doing your profession. I think that's just a neat level of flavor that they're putting in. There is, of course, always the fear of gold, right? Because that situation was rough, and many people thought, hey, do you just want us to buy more WoW tokens? So Blizzard have said that they definitely do not want a repeat of the legendary situation. They've said this multiple times over. Will that be successful? Well, we will just need to see how the economy shakes out. But in terms of balancing out resource drop rates and crafting costs, that is Blizzard's intent. Here's a great example. Crafting a piece of epic quality gear will cost you some resources, but the rare and very important resources are from soulbound raiding. Now, if you want to upgrade a normal normal raid piece to a heroic raid piece, what do? Obviously, that was very expensive in terms of gold when you're upgrading your legendaries in Shadowlands. Situation here, unlike with Shadowlands legendaries, is that you can actually get your same bit of gear recrafted at a higher item level for what Blizzard calls a minimal cost. The only bit that's going to be hard is getting the soulbound resources from the heroic raid. I'm going to focus on gearing just for a little bit here. I know there's the likes of engineering that are going to be just crazy flavorful and fun, but I think that gearing is important, because what this means for everyone who plays the game is that deterministic endgame content gearing is there. And it's got quite a few functional similarities to the role that Valor points played in the past. This is something that so many of us have wanted in the game for so long. So let's say you show up in raid, but you get no loot. Well, you will get some of the soulbound crafting resources. Those can then be used to either craft the raid quality stuff yourself, or to have somebody else do it for you. Now, you can have 5 pieces of this gear, and that gear can go all the way up to mythic quality. Similar goes for Mythic Plus and PvP players as well, by the way. But unlike the Valor points of old, there's of course a massive variety of gear slots covered by this crafted gear. So if you can replace a bit of crafted gear, then, with a new drop from a raid, say, well, you can go and get another bit of crafted gear made for another slot. You'll just have to get the resources, just like Valor points. So actually, this should really help level out your just rate of progress in the content, and it'll do that in a way that the randomness of vault drops cannot. Blizzard just needs to make the gold aspect right. At least, though, they say their intent is to balance the resources such that those crazy Shadowlands prices are never going to happen again. Continuing the victory lap here, I'm going to talk about files, because these are the replacement of flasks. They actually last half as long, they cost half the amount of resources, and they've got far more varied effects. And that's almost a key word there, varied effects, because even in some things you can add to bits of crafted gear and various other things, there's just really cool green text being added, and I think the vials really showcase that. So these vials can be stacked twice for the same duration as a flask today, but the point is that the various different effects will be useful in different situations. So from a raider's perspective, I mean, as an example, you'll maybe want to shake things up on a per boss basis. There's some vials that, compared to just a baseline one of getting more stats, may be a bit harder to play with. They maybe will only kick in when your character is standing still or something. So actually carefully planning out your movement in fight will mean you'll get more use out of that file and therefore a little bit more throughput. So that's actually just a little bit of gameplay customization of, I suppose, an interesting choice to make as a raider. So I like this, and it might even lead to a more varied vial market for the crafters who are taking part in this as well, of course. That's some new gameplay options for us raiders and the Mythic Plusers and everyone else. Obviously, we need to see how the balance lands, but I do like the widened design space. And as I said, we are seeing other pieces of green text that crafters can put on gear that are actually really cool. I mean, ones that give you a buff after you defeat a boss in a dungeon. That's just kind of neat. It's fun. Blizzard are generally trying to just give us more fun effects. Now, I guess there could be some balance concerns there, but for me, really, I'm kind of focused on the fantasy and the fun more. So, with more progression and more depth, I think this is going to leave people with more interesting options when building out their characters. I guess I'd then just say, let's not think about the impact of guides because, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be Abyss, right? But it's like, there's always going to be Abyss. But if we let that infect the design too much, can you see how that could kind of lead to some thinking that would make it boring? I don't know. It's quite the debate to have, but not the one for today. So overall, my impressions are really strong. This is just fantastic. When Blizzard talk about revamping the very core of World of Warcraft, working on the fundamentals, this is the shit that I want to see. Professions just look more interesting than they ever have before, really. I think it's neat. Now, obviously, the testing conditions did involve me being able to just buy a thing from an NPC that gave me loads of specialization points. So by no means was I testing that in realistic scenarios. So I think that's more just, less testing the rate of progress and how the progression feels, and more just having a feel around with the various things you can do. So overall, I'd say it looks fantastic, and I think I will enjoy it quite a bit. Personally, I like crafting games, I like industry in games. With this, I think there was more fantasy, I think there was more role-playing game, and frankly, the work order system is just really cool. Because what it actually means, as a crafter, let's just say you're a crafter, you're focused on big weapons, right? Well, you could log into Valdrakken, and I'll try to get some footage up from the stream here, because just so you can actually see the area in Valdrakken. You can go pick up a crafting order, maybe make somebody a big badass sword. They've given you some soul-bound stuff that they got from their heroic raid, and they're going to give you a commission. Cool. You pick that up and you're like, bam, seal the contract. You go, you craft your thing, you hand it in, you get whatever commission you've charged, and you could just kind of keep on doing that for a while. You could actually go and just spend an hour crafting. Just getting some gold in a way that is not just turning you into a factory that produces auction house items. Because, let's be real, typing in, /2, hey, I can craft some shit, maybe that's just not super realistic in how aspects of the game work today. So I think that there is so much potential here, and, I mean, look, it's not some crazy back-of-the-box feature that is going to get, a million new players or anything like that, but I think it's things like this that are important for the long-term health of the game, and I'm so happy to see Blizzard actually put in the work and try to improve the foundations. So, Good shit. We'll see how it develops, and soon enough, I'm going to compile all of the interesting and wacky effects so that, well, I can take you through all the crazy green text and the fun little flares that your gear might actually have in this expansion. Okay, that's it for me. Let me know what your impressions of this system are. I'll see you in the next video.